It's Tony from the Handlebar Workshops, and today we're in the kitchen workshop, and we're going to be making some beer. What we're going to do is we're going to make a small batch, which in the end will leave us with about a gallon of beer. We'll put that in the bottles, and then we'll drink it. Maybe not all at once, but it's only a gallon, so maybe. The nice thing about small batch brewing is that you probably have a lot of the equipment that you need already in your house. For instance, a 2-gallon stock pot, a whisk, a wooden spoon, maybe a colander, some OxyClean, and maybe even a thermometer that you trust a lot. Temperature can be very important. There are some things that even doing small batch brewing that you're going to have to buy from either online or a home brew store. For instance, this is a fermenter. We'll get into what it does later, but it's just basically a plastic bucket with a lid, and the lid has a hole in it. An airlock goes in the hole. Again, we'll go over all that. I bought those from my local home brewer. This is Star Sand. This is for sanitizing all the equipment because cleanliness is important when you're brewing, because the beer will be sitting there for about a month before you start to drink it. You don't want any bad bacteria growing in there because it will give it bad flavor. And then you also need a recipe kit. Just starting off, you probably just want to go with a recipe kit. It's called Extract Brewing. We'll get into that as well. You probably want to stay away from all grain or brew in a bag type stuff for your first couple brews. Get your feet wet with the recipe kit. That you can also get from a home brewer store, or you can also get online. You also need some water, which you probably have in your kitchen. I have a tap here, which the water isn't very good, so I use the water out of the bottle here in the back. That's much better water than what I get out of the tap. And most importantly, you gotta have a home brew. But if you're just starting, and this is your first home brew kit, you can go with any kind of beer. But you're making beer, so you gotta drink beer, right? That's what I say. So, our recipe kit is from Northern Brewer. I've brewed with a bunch of other companies' brew kits, and I've found that I've liked Northern Brewer the best. This is a Goose Island Sweet Porter. This is kind of the trifecta of home brewing controversy right here. It's Northern Brewer and it's Goose Island, both of which were bought by InBev Anheuser-Busch. A lot of home and craft brewers are upset that a big corporate conglomerate has bought out the way home brewers are brewing. On the other hand, I like Northern Brewer's home brew kits. I've brewed a lot of them, and they've always come out very well, and they taste very good. The beer that I have over here is also a Northern Brewer kit, and it's very good. Some places will sell you a full brew kit that you need. It comes with a recipe kit, it comes with a fermenter, which in my case was a glass bottle, a glass gallon jug, that is now fermenting mead. And it also comes with an auto siphon that allows you to transfer beer from either the kettle or from the fermenter. It's not necessarily needed right now. I'll show you around it. And it comes with some other stuff, some way of cleaning and sanitizing your equipment as well. And this is the basic equipment you need to start brewing beer in your kitchen. There's some stuff you'll need for the bottling process that's not included here, but you can get, that's going to be a couple weeks from now. You can buy that or have it ordered and come in later after brew day. I have been doing this for a while and I have gathered a bunch of other equipment that makes things a little easier, and I will be using that, but I will also talk you through about how you would normally do it if you didn't have that piece of equipment. Oh God, I need a beer. Alright, so we're going to be doing an unboxing of the sorts here. This is just a basic recipe kit. It doesn't come with any special equipment. This was about $20. Let's see what's in it. Comes with a nice little booklet from Goose Island saying giving you all sorts of information about what your end product should look like and taste like. And we've got a lot of hops here. I'm typically not a hoppy type person. I don't like IPAs, but there are a lot of hops here. This is a muslin sack, we'll get to that. Lactose. This is a porter, but this is usually used in a milk stout to help give it a bit of sweetness. Makes the stout beer a little more creamy, and that's from the lactose sugar. It's unfermentable, so it doesn't add to your final alcohol percentage, but it does give a bit of sweetness to the beer. These are interesting. We'll be using these on bottling day. They're just basically, they look like throat lozenges, but they're just sugar, and you just plop them into a beer bottle, and then when you add on there, the yeast that's still in the beer will provide carbonation in the bottle. This is our yeast. This is an English ale yeast, and that's actually what turns sugar in water or sugar in a liquid into alcohol. So this is what's actually going to make our beer, and it's also going to be what causes our beer to fizz. This is a Goose Island Sweet Porter grains. You can kind of see them there. We'll get into, our next step will be putting these into a bag and steeping them to start creating our wort. Beer lingo, wort is basically sweetened water, sweetened with the sugar from the grains, from the malted grains. And then we have 2 pounds of dried malt extract. When you're doing an all grain brew, the grain will give you all the sugar and the fermentables you need in order to create the beer. But it takes a long time. It's a bit more complicated. So from a first step, it's best to start doing with an extract. There's a liquid extract and there's dry extract. This is a dry malt, and it's all malted extract. So it's either dried malt extract, DME, or liquid malt extract, LME. And this is DME. So we'll be adding this to the water after we're done steeping the grains. The Northern brewer is very good about their instructions. So this comes with instructions on everything you need to do and the order you need to do them on brew day and on bottling day, and how to ferment and how to condition. It's all right here on this page, and you can go online, you can read this online as well. But I've done enough brewing, I pretty much know what I'm going to do, how it works, I know what needs to happen. I will read this over and make sure there's nothing special I need to worry about. It also tells me how long and when to put in the hop additions into the wort. We need water in order to brew beer. You could just put the water directly from where your water source is, whether it's a tap or whether it's a bottle like this. You can put it right into your brew kettle, or you can put it into one of these. I like using this. It's just easier to transport for me. The instructions say to add 1.25 gallons to the brew kettle in order to start boiling. I like to do a sparge, and we'll get into what that means. But what I like to do is take that 1.25 gallons and split it up. And actually, I found with my experience that I actually need 1.5 gallons. So what I do is I put 3/4 of a gallon in the brew kettle to steep the grains, and then another 3/4 gallon on the side in order to sparge with at the end. A plastic jug like this has a 1 gallon mark. It has a little dot for the 3/4. There's a half gallon and then a 1/4 gallon. So I can go by that and fill everything up to the 3/4 gallon mark and fill my pots and start heating water. So now we've got 2 pots with 3/4 of a gallon in each. This is the brew kettle. this is the sparge water. We'll get into sparging again later. It's not necessary to sparge, but I like doing it, and I think it produces a better beer. For your first or second brew, don't worry about it. Just follow the directions that come with the kit. When you gain more experience, this will make more sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a thermometer into the brew pot and wait for it to get to about 160 degrees. If you just have the other thermometer, just use that. That's why you need at least one thermometer. This is not the one I showed at the beginning of the video, but this is something I picked up along the way. Now we're going to have to steep the grains in the brew kettle, the 3/4 of a gallon of water. But we got to get this into this mesh bag, and it'll steep almost like a tea bag in the water. I found the easiest way to do that is just to take a big glass, a beer glass in this case, from a local eatery. Find the open end of the muslin bag. Kind of stick your hand in there, kind of stretch it out a bit. Give yourself a little room. You just put it in there and kind of pull the end over the top like that. Take the grains, open them up, and gently pour them into the bag that's in the glass. Now you're going to take the top and pull it up so all the grain is at the bottom of the bag. Just like that. You're going to go down here, do a quick twist, and pull it through the tie. Now your grain won't fall out of the bag. So we've reached about the temperature. The instructions say to go to 170. I usually stick around 155 or so. Actually got a little distracted and went over 160 here. So we're kind of right in the middle there. I figure that's good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the grain bag that we just did, and I'm just going to set it into the water. Kind of mix it around a bit in here. Let me remove this. Kind of stir things in a bit here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the grain bag is mostly submerged in the water here. I'm going to use a paper clip to clip the bag to the side so this end doesn't fall in, because that's hot water in there and I don't want to have to fish that out of there. I'm going to put the thermometer back, and then I got to try and keep this at a fairly constant temperature. I didn't say this at the beginning, it's not necessarily needed. You can just turn the heat on when it gets a little too cool and turn it off when it gets up to the right temperature. But a good way of insulating it is just to use a beach towel or a blanket. Gotta turn this one off too before I do that. Move this one back here. We'll just wrap that up, keep it out of the wort. Then we just monitor the temperature. Then we get ready for starting to add the malt extract. By the way, I also forgot to mention that you want to let this steep for about 20 minutes. So set a timer. And when it's done, we add the malt extract. Alright, so the temperature's dropped a little bit below 160. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the beach towel. Do a little stirring with the bag itself. pull the bag out a little bit. Turn the heat on. I'm just going to bring the temperature back up to about 160. And there we go. Quick as that. I can put the bag back in. You don't want to leave the bag in there while the heat is on because it will burn. But Tony, you say, at the beginning of the video you... But Tony, you say, at the beginning of the video you espoused on how important cleanliness was. I haven't seen you clean a thing yet. Well, while we're letting the grain steep over there, we're going to clean out the fermenter. We didn't need to clean the boil kettle or the other kettle or the other pot because they are going to boil, and the boiling will clean everything we need there. Any utensils we use before the boil or during the boil do not need to be sterilized and cleaned either, because the boil will also kill any bacteria or anything on those utensils as well. And you'll see that when we get towards the end of the boil. However, the fermenter does need to be cleaned. I also have some beer bottles that need to be cleaned as well, so I'll take care of that in this step. What I do is I add a couple scoops of OxyClean. There's also a product called PDW that a lot of homebrewers tend to like. But OxyClean is very easily found in most grocery stores. So just put a couple scoops of OxyClean in there. Fill with hot water. I have a sponge that only is used for cleaning the fermenter. It's a plastic fermenter and you need to be careful not to scratch it. So even though this has got a scratchy side, I only use the soft side. And I never put anything metal in there. I did that once and I scratched it and I had to replace it. This is a newer one because I've already scratched one with metal. So remember that. It's filled with hot water. We're just going to make sure we use the sponge without the scratchy side and just wipe down all the surfaces. And get that OxyClean nice and mixed up with our hands. Now that I've got the fermenter cleaned, I'm going to pour hot soapy water into a tub. Again, this is not something you need to start, it just helps out a bit. You can use it as a sink to clean other things that you need. But I just like having this tub here. It also works well with bottling and stuff like that. It's not necessary. This is one of the things I accrued during the numerous times I've been brewing small batches. This tub full of OxyClean will also come in handy to clean bottles that I have to clean. You kind of see one back here. I have used regular store-bought bottles with beer already inside, and the OxyClean helps take those labels off nice and easy. They just slide right off, especially if they're paper. If they're plastic, it's a little more work, but the paper ones just slide right off. It's great for cleaning bottles. It's also great to use this tub for stuff that's going to touch the wort after the boil. For instance, the airlock and the colander. Those can go right in to the Oxy. We'll take the airlock apart. Just stick it right in there. You want to make sure that you rinse off your OxyClean very well, especially off of plastic. It's very slippery, and you don't want any of the OxyClean getting in your beer. It'll give it an off taste. So rinse that very well. The grains are almost done steeping over here, so we got to get our extract ready to go. You could just cut open the top and start pouring it in and stirring it up a bit, just a little at a time so you don't get any clumps. But I like putting mine into a bowl and using a scoop. Again, it's not something that's essential to start, but it's a nice to have, and something that I've gotten since I started. And I'm also putting the lactose in there as well, because the lactose goes in at the same time, before the boil starts. Alright, the steeping is done. So I will remove the beach towel. I will remove the beach towel. I have a colander here. This is just for draining vegetables or something like that. Again, this is not needed. If you follow the directions that come with the kit, it doesn't say anything about this. But this is something I like to do. And this is something that'll come in handy as I move towards actual all-grain brew in the bag type stuff. So take the thermometer out. I'll lift the grain ball up. Just put the colander on top and let it drain through for a bit. You don't need one like this either. You could just use one of the mesh ones as well. It doesn't need to be perfectly sanitized since this is pre-boil. So we're good. While I let the grains drain, I'm going to take this other pot and heat this back up. I want to get this up to about 170 or so, 175. Right now we're about 136. So we got a little while to wait. Alright, we've reached about 170, 171 degrees on the sparge water here. Now sparging is a process where you pour clean water over grains that have already been mashed, that have already been steeped in the brew kettle, or the mash tun, or whatever you're doing here. You're going to pour clean water slowly over, and what it's going to do is it's going to extract more sugar and more of the proteins and starches that the yeast love to eat. And it's going to put it into your wort that's already in here. Again, this is not something you necessarily need to do for your first few times. Heck, if all you want to do is small batch brewing and follow the instructions forever and that's all you want to do, that's great. But if you want to get into brew in the bag type stuff, all grain brewing, maybe get into a bigger batches, 5-gallon batches and such like that, this is something you're going to have to do with those batches. Now I just let that sit for a bit and drain out. We'll probably do a little squeezing to get as much water out of there as possible, because out of the 1.5 gallons that I had split between the two pots, there's a lot of water still soaked into that grain right there, so I will probably squeeze it out. There's a bit of a controversy saying that you shouldn't squeeze, but most everything I've read, and I've done it before and haven't had any issues, squeezing is just fine. Alright, so I'm just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing a little bit here. I don't want to get the grain to come through the bag, but I want to get as much water out of there as possible. And it is sticky, because it's basically sugar water. So I'm going to put this in the sink to let it finish draining in there. Look how nice and dark black that is. And that's just with the grains being in there. I made this a while back to kind of give an idea of how much volume I have. I've got 1 quart, which is a 1/4 gallon, 2 quarts, which is a half, 3 quarts, 1 gallon, 1.25 gallons, 1.5, 1.75 gallons. So I'm actually a little bit less than 1.5 gallons at this point. We know I started off with 1.5 gallons, so I've lost about almost 1 quart of water to the grains. Now I made this just by pouring water in 1 quart at a time and marking with a pencil on where it goes, and then using a saw and a file to notch out the notches. And I have a number and letter stamp to put that in there. So now we bring it to a boil. Hey everyone, this series is running a bit long, so I'm doing a full George Lucas and I'm making this a trilogy. That's right, you should be able to get episode 2, The Wort Strikes Back, right around in this area, and get episode 3, Return of the Alcohol, right over here. See you there. Bye.